Hello, you have found your way to module number 3, Identifying Business and Legal Tools of the Transitioning Land to a New Generation Land Transfer Training. I'm Jerry Cosgrove with American Farmland Trust, and I'll be walking you through this presentation today. You can find links to worksheets and information that accompany this presentation in the description below. In addition to these online resources, we also have trained staff who would be happy to help you in whatever stage you are at in your transfer process. Look in the description below to find out how to connect with us. This module is the third of 5 consecutive modules in the Transitioning Land to a New Generation curriculum, which is designed to help you gain the basic skills needed to participate in a farm, ranch, or land transfer process. This module prepares you to prepare to choose the tools you might need to move the transfer process forward. The learning objectives include comparing various ways to transfer assets, identifying tools you need to participate in a farm or ranch transfer, and using basic terms to communicate with legal and business advisors. We have found that most training on this farm ranch transfer and transfer cover succession and/or estate planning within farm families, and mostly from the point of view of the senior generation. Since land transfers increasingly occur between non-relatives, we have tried to make our training as inclusive and relevant as possible. For those of you who come from farm families and for those who don't, for younger producers and/or beginners, as well as for landholders looking for someone to take on management of their land, their operation, or both. It's designed especially for people who have a property in mind and have at least started to talk with someone about transferring it. From young and beginning farmers and ranchers to landholders who may be retiring or planning their estates, or who want to make land available for a new generation. This curriculum was created by American Farmland Trust with a lot of help from a national educational team of advisors and a wonderful group of subject matter experts. It was made possible by a grant from the USDA Beginning and Farmer Rancher Development Program Award number 2020-49400-3325, with additional support from Farm Credit and the members of AFT. This module is meant to prepare you to work with legal and business advisors to move your transfer process forward. It's a high-level overview which introduces key concepts to help you consider topics and questions to discuss with your team down the road. Building on Module 1, today you will decide which assets to include in your transfer situation, whether that transfer is raw land or land and other physical assets, or if it includes some or all of the farm or ranch business. Based on which path you choose, you will learn about the main tools to plan a transfer and identify the ones you need to use. Finally, because legal language can be confusing, you will also learn key terms involved in the farm ranch transfer process, so you can communicate with attorneys and others as you move through the transfer process. As we've noted before in other modules, there are a series of steps in a farm or ranch transfer process. We have broken it down into 10 steps. You will likely take most, if not all of them, but it's not a linear process. So while a certain amount of order makes sense, you will likely find you move forward and back several times before you are done. Whether you are the owner or the incoming producer, the legal and business tools you will use in your farm or ranch transfer depend on what you value, as well as your goals and the assets being transferred. In the first workshop, we talked broadly about what's involved in the process and pointed out the importance of being clear about what you are transferring. Is it just raw land or the land with structures? Or are you involved with the transfer of some or all of the farm or ranch business as well? Diving deeper, are you considering tangible or physical assets like a house, barns, or fencing, or intangible assets like client relationships, business reputation, or brand? The transfer is as complex as passing down or taking over an existing farm or ranch business along with other people. You will have to consider many people's goals and needs to decide how assets will be shared. It's also to be clear about who is involved or has a key stake in the process. Are you working with your family or with non-relatives or both? There are four main ways to transfer assets, whether the land, the farm or ranch business, or personal property like cash, investments, or family heirlooms. These can stand on their own or be combined in various ways and include a gift or a partial gift to a person or a trust, a sale or partial sale to a person or business entity, inheritance, which is usually determined by a will or trust. If the person dies without a will, the inheritance is considered intestate, something else I will talk about in a bit. If there is an estate plan, it might include a trust as well as a will. Inheritance can also occur by operation of law, which includes joint accounts and transfers on death, which we'll discuss later. And finally, there's a lease, which is a temporary transfer of some, but not all of the rights of ownership. Leases can also be written with an option to purchase, so they can lead to ownership. A gift is a transfer of an asset from one person to another where the giver either receives no payment or less than full market value payment in return. Gifting is a good way for owners to help the new or next generation gain access to land or a farm or a ranch business if they can afford it and have someone they'd like to give it to. Gifts can be full or partial and given to a person or trust. They can include any kind of asset from land to the business to personal assets. Gifts are also a way for owners to reduce the value of their estate to reduce the tax burden on their heirs. Before making a gift, owners should find out if they will owe any taxes on the gift and if it will affect a future application for medical assistance under the Medicaid program. Gifts are usually welcomed by the incoming producer, but the beginner should consider a couple of things. Can they afford to pay the taxes that may be associated with the gift, including property taxes if the gift includes land and related property assets? Do they feel comfortable receiving the gift? They can use the gift as the gift giver intended, or are they comfortable making independent use of the gift? A sale is a transaction between two or more parties in which the buyer receives tangible or intangible goods, services, or assets in exchange for money or other financial consideration. Sales are the most common type of exchange and can be used as part of an estate or succession plan or on their own. Sales can be partial or discounted, made in installments, transferred gradually over time, and can include everything but from equipment to raw land to the entire farm or ranch business. A bargain sale is a type of discounted sale that can be useful in a farm or ranch transfer. In a bargain sale, the land or other asset is sold at less than its fair market value. It's especially useful if the sale is to a land trust or other nonprofit organization by combining income-producing benefit of the sale with a tax reduction benefit of the charitable donation. As a note, if the sale includes a business as well as assets like land, it's important to consider the structure of this business as well as its worth. And also in this case, the sale employs a special type of contract called a buy-sell agreement, which I will talk about in the next section. Inheritance refers to the transfer of property and other assets, as well as debts and obligations after the owner dies. Usually this occurs within a farm family, but not always. And because farms and ranches have emotional value beyond their financial or asset values, inheritance can lead to differences of opinions and conflicts. Working things out in advance through an estate or succession plan can reduce the chance of disputes. If a person dies without a will, that's called an intestate. A lease, as I mentioned before, a lease is a transfer of land or other assets where the tenant pays the owner or owners to use their assets for a long or short period of time. Ground leases and other long-term leases can be a useful tool in the farm ranch transfer toolbox. So it's important as we identify tools to choose the tools that support your values, goals, and needs. As noted on the slide, different people will have different perspectives. One size certainly does not fit all, and these tools can be used to achieve many different goals. Since the owners and incoming farmers and ranchers tend to have different perspectives and goals, their values may differ as well. They can be especially different depending on whether they're exiting or entering farming or ranching, and whether the land, the business, and/or other assets are being transferred as part of the process. This is one of the reasons it's important to know what you want to get out of the transfer situation and arrangement, so you can choose the tools which advance your vision, value, and goals. In this section, I'm going to briefly explain the main tools used in the transfer situations, when to use them, and toward what ends. Because each of the tools is a means to an end, the ones you choose will vary depending on what you want to get out of the transfer, as well as the outcomes that the other party wants. One size does not fit all. A cookie cutter approach is unlikely to work in what are almost always very individualized situations. Here you will learn about the basic tools, and then you can decide what kinds of advisors you need. Be sure to stay focused on your own values and goals and respect those of the other party. These will help you achieve success. Transfers are challenging, especially between non-relatives. The transfer often focuses on the land and potentially other assets. These other assets can be real estate, such as house or barns, or things like fencing equipment, crops, orchards, or livestock, or business assets like contracts or a client's list. As a longtime ag economist used to say, however, management is the key. This is still true today because farm and ranch businesses continue to operate on thin margins and are subject to variable market conditions and unpredictable weather. If you are in a transfer situation that includes the farm or ranch business, it is important to transfer the management skills and responsibility. This is best done over time, whether it's within a family or not. And because these assets, the operating assets, generate income, these business assets are usually transferred first. But the business itself is not always worth transferring, or the entering producer may want to manage a different kind of farm or ranch than the exiting owner and may just simply focus on the hard assets, such as land, equipment, or livestock. And usually both parties share the goal of financial security and peace of mind. But of course, these may mean different things to them depending on whether they are entering or exiting the farm or ranch business. So it's important to keep in mind that it's a two-way street in terms of financial security and peace of mind, because any successful transfer should meet the needs of both parties. So in thinking about assets, we really need to be thinking about the who, what, and when. So what is your situation? Are you part of a farm or ranch family and the transfer will occur between relatives? Are you a retiring producer who doesn't have an heir identified to take over your operation? Are you a beginning farmer or rancher searching for land to start or expand your operation? Depending on your situation, you will need to use different tools. To choose the tools that are right for you, think about when the transfer is going to happen. Will it be your life, the owner's life, or after death? Does the transfer include the business, other assets, or just the land? Beyond possible family members, who else is involved or has a stake in the outcome? Are there other people's needs you will need to consider? Different tools address different issues, from land transfer to transfer management of a farm or ranch business, from financial security and retirement to estate planning. Today, I will provide a high-level introduction to the most common tools. But once you have a general understanding and begin to tie the tools to your situation and goals, it's important to work with a professional advisor to help you move forward with the transfer plan. And as I noted before, if a business is involved, management needs to be transferred one way or the other. If you're involved in a transfer that includes a farm or ranch business, and whether you are the owner, the incoming producer, many family members together, or some other arrangement, as you will have to transfer the management, including knowledge, either all at once or over time. This can be quite a challenge. As the owner prepares to move on, the incoming producer must learn how to run the show. Often both generations work together for a period of time. But whether at once or gradually over time, the process requires the owner to hand over the decision-making to someone else. This can be hard for both parties, so open and honest communication is critical. The incoming producer will need to start taking over the day-to-day decisions and may want to do this sooner rather than later. But the owner has made a big investment in the operation and may have trouble letting go. So there will need to be a meeting in the middle on this part of the process. Business tools include the way you structure your operation, including contracts between business owners that address the business structure, buy-sell arrangements if there's going to be a termination or transfer of the business, and general operating agreements that will cover the day-to-day operations. Business structure can also support the transfer and management as well as assets. It can separate ownership and management and allow the gradual transfer over time. It affects the ownership of land and other assets as well as the people and activities involved in the farm and ranch operation. And it also influences daily operations, how decisions are made, and the responsibilities of the owners, managers, and employees. Business structure affects management, affects transfer in several ways. The most important is that it can limit liability, and it certainly helps ease the transfer of ownership interest gradually over time. There are four main types of businesses: sole proprietorships, partnerships, limited liability companies, or LLCs, and corporations. Each has its advantages and disadvantages from a farm ranch transfer perspective, including different tax and legal implications. Whether you are forming a business or if you already have a business structure and are working with someone who has a business structure in place, it's important to understand things like who owns what, who makes the business decisions, are there liability concerns, and how is the income taxed? Sole proprietorships are the simplest, easiest, and cheapest type of business to create. The sole proprietorship, the business is owned and run by one person, and legally there is no difference between the owner and the business. Because of this business structure doesn't own separate liability protection to the owner, or in legal language, they have, quote, unlimited liability. So the owner is solely responsible for all business activity, including lawsuits and debt. In a farm or ranch transfer situation, it is important to note that you can't transfer partial interest in a sole proprietorship, while you can in other kinds of business entities like partnerships or LLCs or corporations. This can make it challenging to transfer different individual assets to different people in the context of a sole proprietorship. A partnership is like a sole proprietorship, just between two or more people. Partnerships owners may have equal stake and share liabilities. Like sole proprietorships, partnerships don't offer liability protections, but it can be easier to transfer different assets between the parties than it is in a sole proprietorship, since one partner can purchase the other partner's share. Limited liability companies, or LLCs, are legally distinct from their owners and do provide liability protection. It's one of the reasons that they're a very popular form of business organization. In addition, the business can continue after the death of the owners, and it's relatively easy to transfer partial interest in the business to other people, offering ways to transfer the assets or the business gradually. Again, LLCs are often the structure of choice, especially for smaller farms and ranches, because they offer protections from liability but are flexible and a good way to transfer both management and ownership gradually over time. All three of these are considered pass-through entities, which means all of the partners need to claim their profits on their personal tax returns. Lastly, a corporation is an organization or an entity, usually a group of people or another company, or perhaps even an LLC, authorized by the state to act as a single entity and is recognized by law. It provides more protection for the owner or owners, but also more time, detail, and attention to form and maintain. There are 5 types of corporations, including cooperatives and nonprofit organizations. We're not going to go into that level of detail today. Review the information sheet to learn more. These are only 4 of the most common business structure options. If you are reviewing curriculum materials associated with Module 2, now might be a good time to pause the recording and to review the business structures information sheet. Buy-sell agreements help ensure an orderly transfer of farm and ranch assets. They spell out what will happen, or should spell out what will happen in the event of the 5 Ds: dissolution, divorce, disability, disaster, and/or death that would terminate or change the structure of the business arrangement. Essentially, buy-sell agreements are contracts that may require or enable one business owner to buy all or a portion of a shared business upon the retirement, death, or disability of another business owner. The contract, the buy-sell agreement, will specify who will buy the ownership interest, how much it will cost, when it will happen, and the terms of the sale. No one likes to think about these things, especially at the beginning of a relationship, but it's still important to address them. Whether your business structure is a partnership, corporation, or LLC, a buy-sell agreement can set the price and payment terms of the future buyout. As such, it should also address financing options. There are 4 main ways to fund a buy-sell agreement: savings, insurance, loans, and luck. The rich uncle or lottery. The long and short is that buy-sell agreements create a way to determine asset values, outline the process for transferring the business and/or other assets, and provide payment or financing terms. And they can be used to address both the business and the real estate, either together or separately. Key provisions in these should address price through some form of valuation, the transfer process and timetable, and again, the payment terms and any financing that might be needed. Operating agreements come in many forms, including a partnership agreement, corporate bylaws, or an LLC operating agreement. These may be thought of as a contract among all of the members of any entity and within the entity itself. 6 states require LLCs to keep an operating agreement: California, Delaware, Maine, Missouri, Nebraska, and New York. But even without the legal requirement, it's a best practice to have a farm business operating agreement because they'll benefit all farms and ranches, no matter their legal structure. These agreements are used when 2 or more parties have a stake in a farm or ranch business by investing capital, contributing labor and management, and sharing the income from the farm or ranch business. However, while the income is shared, it is not necessarily shared equally. Usually, each party will receive a share based on the extent of their resources and other contributions like management and labor. It's up to the parties to decide how income is shared. Each party's income is used to pay for the expenses, including taxes and debt payments, and the operating agreement will spell out the terms so that the parties know what to expect and are treated fairly. Farm business operating agreements are often used between generations working together on a farm or ranch. In these cases, quite often the senior party often supplies the land and other farm or ranch real estate assets, and the junior party more of the labor. Beyond that, there are many ways that the parties can share ownership of the other assets like equipment or livestock. Perhaps the most important part of the agreement is the discussion that takes place to create one. That's because it forces the parties to think about the potential issues which may come up and to work at resolving them before they turn into problems down the road. Succession and estate planning can be seen as separate tools, but here I will present as if they are a toolbox within a set of other tools that address different issues. Estate planning generally refers to how assets pass on after death, while succession planning looks at how the assets will be transferred either after death or during the asset holder's lifetime. Succession planning also involves and anticipates the transfer of the actual business. Succession planning is often part of an estate plan, but doesn't necessarily have to be. If a farm or ranch business is involved, succession planning will need to address the transfer of the knowledge and management of that business, as well as the assets. As I said earlier, tools can be used for many things. In the case of farm or ranch succession, they may include business structure and buy-sell agreements, but also they include well-planned gifts, healthcare and retirement planning, along with long-term leases and conservation easements, which I will discuss shortly. Well-planned gifts can be an effective way to transfer assets and are often used in family farm transfers, but they need to be balanced with other strategies. For farm and ranch transfer purposes, a gift is a lifetime asset transfer at less than market value, or where no payment is received. As noted, a bargain sale is a part sale and part gift and can be a useful way to provide a discount to facilitate transfers in or outside the family. But you need to be careful about potential tax implications with a large gift. However, as a frame of reference, the federal and estate and gift tax exemption for 2024 is $13.61 million per person. So essentially, a couple can pass over $26 million free of federal estate and gift tax. The annual federal gift tax exclusion for 2024 is $18,000 per recipient per year. Most states do not have gift taxes, so this can provide an additional financial benefit. Note that these numbers are indexed for inflation and meaning they may increase annually. And to further complicate future planning, the current federal estate and gift tax exemptions will sunset on December 31st, 2025. And without new legislation, they will revert to the numbers from 2017, $5.6 million for both the estate and gift tax exemptions. This will involve considerable focus to adjust to these changes should they come to pass. Retirement can also present cash flow problems, so retirement planning should focus on income as well as the cash flow. Income can come from sources like Social Security, a pension, an IRA, or retirement fund. In a farm or ranch transfer situation, it is important for both parties to be aware of the need for ongoing income and ensure enough assets are protected to support the exiting landowner in retirement, as well as generate income for the new operator. Retirement planning should also address how to stay active and healthy and prepare for the possibility of long-term or nursing home care in case it is needed. Healthcare is a top concern for both owners and incoming farmers and ranchers, and its potentially high costs should be addressed in the context of farm or ranch transfer. Many older farmers will worry about how they will pay for healthcare when they retire. This can have an impact on their transfer plans. Out-of-pocket healthcare costs often are the largest expense in retirement, especially if nursing home care is needed. So they must balance their goals for asset protection with potential healthcare needs. Medicare is the federal health insurance program for people over 65 and some younger people with disabilities. Provides several options, including insurance for hospitalization, medical, prescription drug insurance. Making these choices can be complicated, so it's important to consult with an advisor who is familiar with Medicare programs. Healthcare is also a concern for incoming producers. Its high cost can affect their ability to afford land. Health insurance affords protection from high unexpected costs in the case of a serious accident or illness. Most health insurance policies also cover some preventive services like shots and screening tests at low or no cost. Many farmers have private insurance through an employer because either they or their spouse has an off-farm job. Others buy private insurance or receive insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Note that Medicaid is a federal and state program that can cover healthcare costs for people with limited income. It also offers benefits not normally covered by Medicare, the program for those over 65, including nursing home and personal care services. In addition, it's important to have a healthcare proxy, a document that's used to name a trusted person to serve as your proxy or agent and help make healthcare decisions for you if you can't speak for yourself. Long-term care insurance refers to a host of services that aren't covered by regular health insurance, such as help with routine activities, bathing, dressing, or getting in and out of bed. It can help cover the costs of care for chronic medical conditions and disabilities. Most policies will reimburse you for care in a variety of places, including your home, a nursing home, or an assisted living facility. And whether it's a right choice for you depends on your situation and preferences but it's important to think about it sooner than later. You really can't wait to decide it until you need it. I would also note that it can be quite cost prohibitive for those over 70 in terms of the premiums. If you're reviewing the curriculum materials associated with Module 2, now might be a good time to pause the recording and review the healthcare information. Shifting gears a bit, a conservation easement is a deed restriction that landowners voluntarily place on their property to protect conservation values such as farmland, wetlands, ground and surface water, wildlife habitat, historic sites, and scenic views. And agricultural conservation protects working farmland, grassland, and ranch land to keep it available for agriculture by restricting non-agricultural development and/or subdivision. Agricultural easements can be donated or sold to a purchase of agricultural land easement program, also known as purchase of development rights. Agricultural conservation easements can help facilitate transfer by keeping the land available for farming and ranching and reducing the speculative value to its agricultural or restricted value. This can make it more affordable for a new farmer or rancher to buy. Selling an agricultural conservation easement also can create equity for family members who don't want to farm by generating income for them while making the land available to family members who do. And it can also help fund the landowner's retirement, especially if there is a funded purchase of ag conservation easements program or PDR program, purchase of development rights option available. These include federal programs, state programs, local, and some private organizations who purchase these easements or development rights. Land transfer can be about more than land ownership, strictly speaking. According to the USDA, about 39% of farmland acres in the contiguous 48 states is rented. This is especially true of cropland, where more than half is rented compared to just over a quarter of pasture land. So leasing, especially long-term leases, can be an important tool. Leases can be transferred over time, particularly if there are a long-term lease and the lease allows it. However, most leases are annual handshake type leases. These short-term leases provide flexibility, but little security, and aren't really a transfer tool. But longer-term leases, which can be hard to come by, can be transferred if the lease permits it, and may also include lease to own, options to purchase, and other provisions, which make leasing worth considering as a pathway to transfer. When considering leases as a farm or ranch transfer tool, it's a good idea to think about 5-year or longer term leases. These can help provide greater security for both the incoming producer and the landowner, support a longer term planning horizon. They can also include rights of first refusal or an option to purchase as a path to ownership. And if the land isn't already assessed for agriculture, they may help it qualify, reducing the landowner's property taxes and carrying costs. Ground leases may be a promising option for some situations. They're a fairly new tool for agriculture. Essentially, they're very long-term leases where the tenant rents the land, but can own the improvements they make to the property, such as building a barn or a shed. Very long-term, usually 20, 30, up to 99 years in length. They are often transferable and allow the tenant to build some level of equity because they can sell the assets that they've improved. Estate planning is a process to ensure the orderly transfer of assets and liabilities at death. These may include a retirement or succession plan and may be designed to reduce or eliminate estate or death taxes. Successful estate planning and farm transfer require effective communication and a team effort, including financial, farm management, tax, and legal expertise. Because the plans must be tailored to individual circumstances, they must be designed to meet a variety of unique situations. We're not going to go into depth about the process here, but we'll touch upon the main tools used in an estate plan. In addition to the tools we've already discussed, estate planning tools include transfers on death, or TODs, wills, trusts, and life insurance. A good estate plan will put the right people in charge of the right things and give them the right information and legal authority. Often designed to avoid probate and minimize taxes, an estate plan should always address personal and/or family goals, accommodate special needs, ensure peace of mind, and potentially support the lifestyle of any heirs. A will is a basic and important legal document that provides instructions on how an estate will be distributed after death. Its use should be coordinated with other tools and the owner's other succession or estate planning efforts. Wills should be updated periodically, especially after major life events like marriages, births, graduations, divorces, and so forth. But even without a major event, most advisors suggest reviewing a will every 5 years or so to determine whether changes need to be made. When preparing a will, landowners are often faced with the challenge of deciding what is fair versus equal for their heirs. Their goal is to pass the farm on to the next generation. They should think about what is fair instead of dividing assets equally among heirs. Oklahoma State University created a statistical model which compares transfer strategies with their probability of success and found that while dividing assets equally is the most common farm succession strategy, these farms are the least likely to continue to the next generation. It's important to understand some of the terminology that's used in wills. The executor is the person named in the will to manage and dispose of the assets. Their job is to implement the literal terms of the will. Probate is a legal process to validate the will and allow assets to be distributed according to the instructions in the will. Intestacy, which is a term we mentioned before, is a situation where a person dies without a will. And each state has an intestate formula in statute that divides assets between the surviving spouse and children when a deceased person dies without a valid will. The basic requirements are set by state law, not the testator or the person who died without making a will. Not surprisingly, intestacy can lead to many challenges, most notably heirs' property issues. Heirs' property refers to land that's been passed down without a will or other legal document proving ownership, in some cases for many generations. This means that all the heirs own an undivided interest in the land, whether they live there or not, are farming it or not, or are even aware of their ownership interests. In some cases, there can be up to hundreds of small share landowners in multi-generational situations. This means that whoever does work and live on the land must get approval from all these relatives before doing things like building new structures, selling or mortgaging the property, or even applying for loans, disaster relief, or other benefits. Also, real estate developers can take the land through court-ordered sales, which essentially eliminates all the heirs' property ownership rights. Heirs' property is best known for the way it affects African Americans in the Southeast, accounting for an estimated 1/3 of all Black-owned land. But it affects Hispanic populations in the Southwest, tribes where it's known as fractional land, and is widespread throughout Appalachia. If you are reviewing the curriculum materials associated with Module 2, now might be a good time to pause the recording and review the Wills and Trusts information sheet. Also known as will substitutes, the transfer on death, or TOD designation, is a simple and low-cost way to transfer assets like joint bank accounts, annuities, and life insurance, as well as joint real estate owned with a survivorship right, usually for spouses and other family members. The transfer occurs at the time of the person's death without the need for probate. It applies to assets that have a named beneficiary, which gives the asset holder a way to specify how much of each of their assets pass on to their designated beneficiaries. While TODs are often not recommended by advisors because they only take effect at death, so they don't allow for gradual transfers, they are relatively simple to put into effect without additional actions such as creating a will or trust. Trusts are legal arrangements where assets are managed by a trustee on behalf of heirs, receivers, or other beneficiaries. They provide legal protection for the trustor's assets, ensure their assets are distributed according to their wishes, which are spelled out in writing, and can save time by avoiding probate for a will, in some cases reduce paperwork, and also avoid or reduce inheritance or estate taxes. Owners often place their assets in trusts so they can receive professional management. The trust document spells out who will receive the assets and when, and what happens to the assets when the trust period ends. In this way, they are used to transfer assets as well as providing financial security for surviving spouses, children, and grandchildren. Almost any kind of asset can be owned and managed by a trustee on behalf of a beneficiary. But some assets are easier to manage, like stocks and bonds, than others, like a farm or ranch. Plus, there are many kinds of trusts, so before utilizing this tool, it's important to consult your accountant and or attorney to choose the best one for your situation. Life insurance, perhaps better thought of as death insurance, is a contract that pays a cash benefit at death. It can be an important tool for both business and personal goals, and is often a key part of an estate plan. There are two basic types of insurance policies: term and whole life. Term life insurance is a contract that pays benefits when the insured person dies during the term of the contract. It's less expensive of the two kinds of insurance. Whole life insurance provides death benefits, which are similar to those of term insurance, but gradually build some cash value over time as premiums are paid. Life insurance of either type can be used to fund a buy-sell agreement, replace the value of assets that have transferred to another family member, establish trusts, provide for non-farm heirs, or pay estate taxes and settlement costs. If you are reviewing curriculum materials associated with the module, now might be a good time to pause the recording and review both the terminology quiz or the glossary of legal terms. So how do you know if the process is on track? We're going to run through some basic guideposts to give you some sense of what to look for. For example, if you are the incoming farmer or rancher, what steps has the owner taken to help you take over the management of the operation? Have they taken any steps to transfer land or other assets to you? If you're the owner, what have you done to transfer management or assets? Have you planned for retirement? Does the incoming producer, employer, partner, or family member have the experience, skills, and desire to succeed? These guideposts can serve as a review and status check on tangible progress in these areas. They give you some basic benchmarks to look for to see if the process is on track and to ensure that all the cards are on the table. With respect to management transfer, it really boils down to the questions of who makes the decisions and how are they made? Who controls the finances, and is that information readily shared with others? And are the decision makers accountable to anyone else in the business? Things to look for are the level of responsibility of incoming producers or junior partners. There's a written operating agreement, as well as things like standard operating procedures and job descriptions for employees if necessary. And importantly, is there financial transparency and operational accountability? Another guidepost is whether any assets have been transferred, or at least is there a plan to transfer these assets? It's important to nail down and be clear about all of the assets that will be transferred. It's also important to have a timetable, preferably in writing, and a way to objectively value the assets being transferred, as well as a plan to finance and pay for them. If there are operating assets like equipment or livestock, these are usually transferred first, with land assets being transferred later. It makes more sense for the transfer to be gradual, but the owner needs to do more than make a verbal promise. The income producer must be able to make the required payments. The more specific the agreement, the better it is, and it's best to get it in writing with assets clearly spelled out so that everyone is on board with the details of which assets are being transferred and when. There are lots of tools to use, which is another reason it is best if agreements are made in writing. For example, is there a written buy-sell agreement that spells out these terms? When it comes to transferring land, it's important to decide how it will be valued. Will it be a gift or assessed at fair market value, or some combination of the two? Financial security and healthcare planning are among the most challenging issues for owners to address before they transfer their farm or ranch to an incoming producer. They are also important considerations for the incoming producer. Has the owner planned for retirement? Have they set aside enough assets to support it? For the incoming producer, will the farm or ranch support all their expenses, or will they need off-farm income? If farm succession takes place in a family where multiple generations are involved in the operation, is there a plan to demonstrate that the farm or ranch can support all of them? This is critical for both sides to the transfer. And what about healthcare costs? These can be a huge expense for owners and incoming producers, but especially if the landowner is stepping down from the farm or ranch business. Is there a plan for asset protection and/or future healthcare or nursing home costs? Beyond the cost of healthcare, do you have someone to speak for you and make healthcare decisions if you are unable to speak for yourself? As noted before, a healthcare proxy is a document that names someone you trust as your agent to represent you in healthcare matters if you are unable to do so yourself. Healthcare proxies are also durable medical powers of attorney, and so the appointment of a healthcare agent or healthcare surrogate is critical. These are perhaps the most challenging issues to address. In part, they're challenging because there's no simple answer or strategy, and trade-offs are often necessary. Any transfer plan must be realistic and feasible. This is why it's good to have a professional team so you can get objective advice when you need it and help you develop a plan B just in case you miscalculated or circumstances change as the process moves forward. Estate planning is important for both generations, but especially important for the landowner. As the landowner or asset holder, it is important to address the fair versus equal, which I've mentioned before. Treating heirs fairly doesn't mean treating them the same, but instead treating them according to their needs and contributions. This is especially tricky if most of your assets are tied up in your farm or ranch, so it's important to communicate why your plan is the way it is and what legacy you choose to leave. A will is a good benchmark of whether or not any estate planning has occurred. If not a will, at least some transfer on death provisions. Other tools to look for as signs of progress would include trusts and life insurance. If you are reviewing the curriculum materials associated with the module, now might be a good time to pause the recording and review the farm or ranch transfer guideposts worksheet. Again, as a reminder, as we begin to wrap up, here are the 10 key actions in a farm or ranch transfer planning process. Remember, it's not a linear process. And while a certain amount of order makes sense, you will likely find as you move forward, you may go back and forth several times throughout the process. For your homework, we'd suggest that you complete the farm or ranch transfer guidepost worksheet. Thanks for listening to module number 3, Identifying Business and Legal Tools. We hope you found this helpful. Remember, AFT has trained staff who can help you continue in your process. Please look in the description below to find out how to connect with us. Again, thanks for listening.